Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be, I think I'm scaring people away. Well, obviously that's not a good thing. I've got an email here from a woman viewer, actually, and she's having some problems because, what's interesting about this email is because most of the time I'm answering questions from guys, but here we've got a woman that's interacting with men in a needy, insecure way, and obviously it has the same effect. It was really something that I thought was absolutely fascinating to me personally, to go from like where I was when I was younger and not succeeding with the kind of women I wanted, and then getting to a place where I was actually rejecting really beautiful women. I remember this girl that posed for Playboy I went out with a couple of times. It's like, she was so fucking lame and just disorganized. The girl was a total mess. She wasn't even ready when I would go to pick her up, and her house was a mess. It was just a fascinating thing to me to be in a position where I was actually rejecting a girl that only like a few short years before that I would have chewed my arm off to have a chance to have a date with this girl. And so it's an amazing experience, but what was also interesting is that when I would go out and I really started to get this stuff and I really started to own it and be comfortable in my own skin, was that I noticed that women started doing the same things to me that I used to do to them. In other words, they'd start acting needy, they'd pursue too much. I remember I met a girl one time. This girl was beautiful. She had dark hair, beautiful skin, but I just couldn't believe how this girl had no self-confidence. She was like, she gave me her number, and she says, "You're going to call me, right?" And she must have asked me 10 fucking times before I ended up leaving. "You're going to call me, right?" Because I guess every guy that gets her number blows her off. And so it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so you meet somebody, and they're constantly going, it's like they presuppose that you're going to reject them. And so it's like everything they do and everything they say is trying to avoid the rejection, trying to get you to not do what's pretty much always happened. It's because what you fear, you attract. It's like this particular girl, she was consumed with fear. And so I ended up going out with her like one particular time because it was like the whole date was like that. It was like one constant long apology for her not being good enough. For whatever it was that, this girl was beautiful. It was amazing. I had the hots for this girl, and I was thinking, man, she had a great body. But when she started talking, it's like she had no sense of self-worth. It's like the way she talked, she thought she was like the biggest fucking loser, and she had nothing to offer, man, even though she was gorgeous. But because she had such a strong set of limiting beliefs, it was repugnant. It's almost like a skunk. It's like being in a room, like a skunk comes in a room, or somebody lights off a stink bomb, and you're at a beauty pageant with all these beautiful women, and it's like because everything stinks, it's like you just want to get the fuck out of there. But it's amazing how quickly I felt the attraction that I had, sexual attraction I felt for this girl, just fucking evaporate. It was for the first time in my life I was getting myself into situations where I was the opposite, experiencing what I had been guilty of for years doing with women. I had no idea that I was doing and saying things that was turning them off. And so I'm going to go through this email, but I got a quote that is appropriate because at the end of the day, what we're dealing with is a time issue. When someone becomes insecure and they fear not getting what they want, in essence, they become attached to a time frame. They're attached to things not working out in the way that they wish or that they hope that they would want to in the time that they would hope. Such as they don't call you back as quickly as you would have liked, or they're not as eager to see you when you want to see them this week, but they're not free until a week and a half from now, and that bothers you. Or you go out and you have this great date, and you expect the girl to call you the next day, and she doesn't call you for 3 or 4 days. It's like, those 3 or 4 days you haven't heard from her, you're like chewing your fingernails off because her calling you a few days after your date or after you hooked up or had great sex, or at least what you thought was great sex, is her way of communicating and complimenting you. Hey, you did such a good job on your last date, and I want to see you again. But when you're reaching out, or when you're first taking the time, when you're so used to chasing and pursuing and running after a woman, and then to go from hanging back and relaxing, it's like the little bird on your shoulder, it's always chirping in your ear, telling you that you got to call the girl, or you shouldn't wait, there must be something wrong, it's probably not going to work out, it's just a matter of time before they reject you, just like all of the others. And so you got to learn to overcome the urge to pursue too much, and also to guard against backing off too much. It's learning to find a balance, a happy medium. But like I said, it's eye-opening when you start seeing women, and you'll see this if you're applying the stuff that I teach, and you've been guilty in the past of chasing people away. You're going to start to see that women are going to start doing, and if you're a woman applying this stuff, you're going to see guys are start doing these behaviors. And so when you were used to being the one that was chasing the other person away, and then the shoe is on the other foot, and you're actually getting chased away by someone who's over pursuing you too much, it's just amazing how, like, internally, the attraction is just like poof. It's like vapor. It just instantly vaporizes. And it's like, I've had that experience literally hundreds and thousands of times since then, talking to a girl that I originally was like, wow, she's really hot. And then you start talking, and you're like, everything was great until she opened her fucking mouth. It was all downhill from there. But this quote is another quote from Maya Angelou. And she says, all great achievements require time. And so great relationships, great businesses, great lovers, it takes time for things to develop. And so if you feel like you have to do something, it's always better to take a breath, relax, and maybe take the action that you think you need to take right now and do it tomorrow. So she says, hey coach, I think I may be scaring people away, and that's why I'm writing you, because I need to figure this out, because I feel that if I don't change, I'll be left alone my whole life, and I don't like this idea. Well, see, you're at the point where the average person gets to when they know they need to change something in their life. You basically are at the point you're like, I'm fucking tired of this happening. It's like the same thing happens over and over. That's where I got to. I got tired of when I would meet a girl that I really liked and I blew it, and I get no more than 1 or 2 dates, and I could never understand why. And it was a big issue for me. And I finally got to the point where I was like, I'm fucking tired of this. I got to figure out what the fuck is going on here and take some serious corrective action. And so that's where you get to. It's like, because people won't change their belief system until it no longer works for them. In other words, if what you've been doing with members of the opposite sex hasn't worked until this point, and you've finally gotten to realize, you're like, you know what I'm doing is not working, I need to change my approach. That has to happen in order for you to change your approach and start moving in a new direction. In other words, you got to see that your old way of thinking and being wasn't working for you. So what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. She says, I met this amazing guy, at least for me, this past November, and we dated the whole month, seeing each other every weekend. And by the beginning of December, he told me he was bisexual. I was like, oh man, that must have been a buzzkill for you. And she says, I got scared, I wrote him an email and broke up with him. I'd say more than likely deep down, obviously that didn't jive with you. You weren't really cool with that. But then you thought about not having this guy in your life. You go, oh my God, now I got nobody. And then you went back to him. A lot of people do that. And that's what caused me to marry my ex-wife, was my fear of never finding anyone better. And it's very powerful. It's just amazing, the men and the women that I talk to all over the world that are in those situations where they're married or they got a family, they're just really miserable, and they knew they never should have gotten in the relationship in the first place. She says, a few days later, I realized that I was maybe being judgmental, contacted him, and started dating him again. After a week, I traveled to visit my family for 2 weeks, and he did the same, and we stayed in contact by Facebook and a few emails. When I came back in January, we spent every weekend together, and things were great. Or at least you thought they were great. She says, until the beginning of February, where a comment I saw in his Facebook made me believe he was seeing another girl. I went to his house the same day or night and confronted him. It's usually not a good way to go about it. Because you don't know, it's like you're seeing something out on the internet, and now you're gonna jump all over him about that. And I was actually at a client earlier today I was talking about. He found something really troubling on the internet about his current girlfriend and love of his life. And I said, what are you presupposing? Are you presupposing the best is happening, or are you already presupposing the worst? Because he's in the process. He's with a girl he's really in love with. And it's the first time he's experiencing this, and so obviously he's feeling very fearful, but based upon all of his old programming and his old belief systems, because of what always happened in the past with other girls, it's kind of like he's already presupposing, well, it's just a matter of time for the other shoe drops, and the shit hits the fan, because there's been a few things that have happened. And so, it's interesting. You're already presupposing the worst here. Is a glass half full or is it half empty? I would say at least when it comes to dating and relationships, you're kind of seeing the glass as half empty in your particular case. She says the girl in question lived in another state, so he wasn't seeing her. We spoke, and I asked him that I wanted to date him exclusively. So now you're trying to lock him down to a commitment because you feel like you got to get some comfort and some certainty about where you stand. And so therefore, in order to give you peace of mind, you got to nail him down to a commitment so you don't feel that he's going to cheat on you or choose somebody else. Or like in this particular case, that he would choose to hit for the other team. In other words, because he also says he's into dudes. She says he told me that he needed more time and we agreed to continue dating. The next day I felt anxious and not secure with what we spoke about previously and went back to his place that night and asked him again to be exclusive. Remember what I said about all the time, all the videos about it's a scientific fact that women are more attracted to men whose feelings are unclear? Well, in this particular case, now she's got the added fear of the fact that this guy is bisexual, and so he's also into chicks, he's also into guys, and that can bring in like the thought of AIDS and disease, and it's like if he's sleeping with other people behind her back. I mean, obviously it's understandable that she's fearful about other things because it's a little different circumstance than most relationships. She says he basically didn't speak much and I left his place. He wrote me a message the next day saying that he liked me, but he wasn't ready for a full commitment. After a few days, I wrote him that I wanted to see him again. I went to his place the next Friday and spent the night with him, but I didn't want to talk about us. After a week, we spoke by chat, and I told him that I was okay with seeing him non-exclusively. He said that was nice, but that he would be busy the next 2 weeks, so he wouldn't have time to see me until then. 3 weeks have passed by, and I haven't heard from him besides him liking some of my posts on Facebook. I also liked some of his things on Facebook, and that was it. By now I'm clear that he doesn't want to be with me. What I want to know is if what I did was way too irrational. Well, obviously it didn't help your situation, and instead of bringing the two of you closer together, it ended up being the impetus of breaking the two of you apart. She says, I was trying to be honest with myself, but after I missed him and thought that maybe things would go back to regular dating and will progress into something else, I was scared to end up hurt and sad, and that's exactly how I feel right now. Remember I did a video a while back, what you fear you attract. Well, you acted based upon your fear, and exactly what you feared most, which was ultimately getting rejected, is what happened, because you haven't heard from this guy in 3 weeks. She said, I went through a bad divorce, and my ex left me for another woman. So obviously now you got an inherent fear about that. And if I was to talk to your ex-husband, he probably dumped you for the same reasons as this other guy did. She says, and I think that has left me somehow insecure. I'm not a teenager. I'm 39, and this particular guy is 37. I really want to know how to change. Well, obviously it's a conscious choice. And I think by now, after going through this, you kind of see where you've been going wrong. But the bottom line is the way you're showing up in a relationship is you got to love the other person in such a way that they feel free. And so when you act the way you're acting smothering, you're acting needy, you're acting clingy. And so especially with a man, a man's deepest fear in a relationship, like when he starts dating somebody, he's going to lose his freedom. He's going to lose his independence to be who he really is. And women also have this fear, but men have this fear in a much greater sense because of masculine energy about purpose, drive, mission, succeeding, accomplishing. And a guy's fear is that he's not going to be able to focus on his purpose in his life and what's most important to him. And so, like I said, going forward, I mean, I wouldn't do anything in this particular case, just wait to hear from him. And if he hears from you, say, hey, I'd like to get together, make a date. And then get off the phone and then go and hang out, have fun, and hook up together. But, I mean, bottom line is this guy, he's not what you really want. Because obviously your first instinct was to end the relationship because you really didn't want to be in a relationship with a dude that was bisexual. And so what you really need to do is you need to stand up for yourself. And you also need to recognize the fact that your behavior is what's driving these guys away. And start interacting with them differently from this point forward. Because if you keep doing what you've always done, you're going to continue to get what you've always got. Something to think about. And I will talk to you soon.